The contemporary separatist movements are one of the most dangerous threats to Russian national security and territorial integrity. This is particularly the case in the North Caucasus, where separatist forces often act under the guise of ethnic or religious movements. Although the Russian federal authorities attempt to fight separatism by political means, in Dagestan and Chechnya, they resorted to the use of force in 1999 in order to defeat the Chechen-led armed rebellion. By the end of the year, the federal forces had re-established their control over most parts of Chechnya, lost in the previous war in 1994 to 1996, but they failed to achieve a decisive military victory over the separatists. Nor was there any political resolution of the conflict. Siberian regional separatism is also actively developing near Russia. It is based on Siberian Russians as a distinct nation, suppressed by the federal center and the European part of the Russian Federation. For example, in Yakutia, or the Sakha Republic, Russia's largest republic spanning over 3 million square kilometers in Siberia, separatist sentiment has evolved into a movement of identity, survival, and new defiance, according to RFU News. It is noted that in September 2025, local deputy Alexander Ivanov crossed the final line by openly discussing Yakutia's need to separate from Russia during an interview in Turkey. He called on Yakuts not to fear those who have occupied their land, directly challenging Moscow's authority. His ties with pan-Turkic circles in Istanbul and support for protests in the Altai Republic have made him a symbol of the awakening. Meanwhile, fighters from Yakutia are already taking up arms in Ukraine's Siberian Battalion, envisioning a free Yakutia, fighting Russian forces and inspiring those back home. RFU News recalls that the Ingush Liberation Army, founded in 2023, now conducts attacks every month in North Caucasus. In June 2025, its militants struck a Russian border post in North Ossetia with drones, killing 2 FSB officers. In August, coordinated arson attacks targeted military depots in Dagestan. And recently, the group released a video showing fighters on patrol, armed, organized, and defiant. Another separatist formation, the Caucasus Liberation Movement, unites Chechens, Dagestanis, and Ingush under one banner, waging what they call a war of anti-colonial resistance. Supported by Ukraine's main intelligence directorate, they recently eliminated a lieutenant colonel from a local counter-sabotage unit in a precision explosion, together with his driver and aide. Their message, Moscow's grip on the Caucasus, is loosening, and the Kremlin's agents are no longer untouchable. Behind much of this growing chaos lies what many analysts now refer to as Budanov's blueprint. General Kirilo Budanov, head of Ukraine's military intelligence, is methodically cultivating resistance within Russia's ethnic regions. His operatives are spreading the truth about Russia's war, about how ethnic minorities, Yakuts, Buryats, Ingush, Dagestanis are being used as cannon fodder and dying by the thousands, while despite compromising less than 10% of the local population, they supply around 40% of contract soldiers. Ukrainian intelligence has made direct contact with exiled activists and underground networks, providing them with intelligence, logistics, and training. The goal is strategic, as every region in turmoil means fewer Russian resources on the front, as many small fires can burn an empire from within. Recall, most of the major movements have existed before the collapse of the Soviet Union and attempted to break away in the 90s or 2000s. These movements have some levels of support among the local population, diaspora, local politicians, and regional elites. Most of the movements are still small in size.
Rare T-54 and T-55 tanks, mass-produced from 1948 to 1979, have reappeared in Russian frontline casualty statistics. This may indicate a desire by Russians to conserve their newer vehicles, sacrificing older ones. This was reported on the social network X by open-source intelligence analyst Richard Variker. According to his calculations, over the past 3 months, the Russians have lost a total of 88 tanks, 22 of which were of an unspecified type. Of the remaining 66 tanks, 4 were T-54 and 55s. While this is a small number in comparison to the overall loss, it is still a significant increase, as the Russians have lost only 15 such vehicles since the beginning of the war. Variker dismisses the idea that these tanks could have been used as indirect fire artillery. Firstly, their gun elevation is too low, limiting their firing range. Secondly, these tanks have a relatively weak 100mm caliber gun, making it less than ideal for artillery. Thirdly, these tanks are too old, so their accuracy at significant distances would be terrible. The analyst noted that Russia recently used T-54 and T-55 tanks to train new tank crews at tank schools, which freed up new tanks for frontline use. However, Variker suggests that approach has now been reversed. We may now be seeing an increase in T-54 and 55 losses at the front, as Russia has replaced them deploying modern tanks to schools to preserve them, and sending the older ones to the battlefield, where their loss is less significant, the analyst suggests. Autumn rains are forcing Russian occupiers to switch from light vehicles to tracked armor. This will impact the pace of the Russian offensive, especially in winter, writes military observer Alexander Kovalenko on his Telegram channel. The rainy season in the war zone will force more and more Russian occupiers to switch from light vehicles to mechanized combat vehicles, the Goose. You can't storm the front lines on motorcycles, electric scooters, or on foot, like you could in the summer, he writes. Kovalenko emphasizes that the transition to tracked vehicles occurs not only during assault operations, but also in matters of logistics. The situation won't improve in winter. This all suggests that the Russian occupiers will slow down their offensive, even stagnate in certain areas, and any attempt to intensify it will lead to increased losses of equipment and personnel, the analyst states. As reported, since the beginning of 2025, Russia's losses on the front have amounted to approximately 100,000 killed. Meanwhile, the scale of advances has remained as minimal as in previous years. According to analysts, this year the ratio of losses between the Ukrainian armed forces and the Russian army has been at least 1 to 5, if not more.